to the moderator candidates. So welcome to Michael Whitmer and Mike Crowley. Thank you so much for all of your years of service to Belmont. Belmont is run by volunteers and you are two prime examples. Mike Whitmer has been town moderator for 16 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
16 years.
Yep.
And previously was a member of the warrant committee, serving 3 years as the chair. Mike Crowley served on school committee for 4 years, 8 years on town meeting, and 6 years on the warrant committee, and was also on the long-term capital planning committee. So I just want to also just sort of describe, because I think a lot of people may not know who the moderator is, some people who are watching. So the town moderator runs town meetings, sets the scope of the warrant, and makes presentations, appoints the majority of the warrant committee, as well as 5 members of the capital budget committee, a majority of the bylaw review committee, and 6 members of the permanent building advisory committee. Moderator also appoints members to special purpose committees, including all building committees. So it's a very important position, and we thank you for serving, and thank you for running. We wanted the same format. So if you could start out with 2 minutes of opening statement. We'll go alphabetically and then we'll do go the other way. So Mike Crowley.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank the Belmont Pan-Asian Coalition, as well as the Belmont Chinese American Association, for hosting this event. I also want to thank you, Mike, because actually I think you gave me my intro to town government with an appointment to the warrant committee several years ago.
I did.
And you know, I have to say that deeply sparked my interest in town government, and I do thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
I think it's important for our Asian American community, which represents a considerable portion of our population, to be involved in Belmont's town government. So I'm not sure of the exact numbers, but I think about 20% of Belmont is Asian by heritage. It could be a little bit higher. This also includes my wife and son. And, you know, of course, we have other ethnic groups in town. And I think if you look at the faces of our town leaders, and frankly, you know, this includes me as well, the people serving on our committees and our town meeting members, you also know that we have work to do to increase the diversity of our residents who are involved in Belmont's town governance. We have an amazing and growing diversity in Belmont, and one of my foremost goals running for town moderator is to do the education and outreach that I think is needed to involve more people in town meeting and ultimately town government. I'm a big believer that Belmont is better when we're all involved. And speaking of involvement, one of my concerns is the long-term health of town meeting. When you look at this year's April ballot, from my perspective, we don't have enough people running for town meeting. In 4 precincts, if you got your 25 signatures to get on the ballot, you're basically already elected. The election is decided. In the other 4 precincts, you know, they're barely competitive. My precinct, we have 1 person more than there are seats on town meeting running. And, you know, this calls into question, in my mind, ultimately, how representative town meeting is if voters don't have a real choice about who represents them. So if we're going to have this local institution of ours be more democratic, we have to have more people run, or we ultimately just create more frustration. And if you consider the amount of frustration that people in the community are experiencing over the override. I think that's kind of a prime example. And that's not saying the override isn't needed. It definitely is needed. So we need to find more people to run for town meeting member next year. I've knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors in my campaign for town moderator. And while people's concerns are different, I do hear frustration. I also run into quite a few people who don't understand what the role of the moderator is and don't really know how the moderator can address some of our fundamental challenges. I'm looking to improve our town meeting process. I'm looking to improve the moderator's committee appointment process. I'm looking to involve.
I think you're running out of time.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, maybe, do the time, and then sit over here, so. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So I'd appreciate your vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Great, thank you. I'm Michael Widmer, and I'm delighted to be here tonight. Thank you for the invitation. It's a real privilege. I'll give you a brief overview of me, my family, and my career. We moved here, my wife Jean was here with me. We moved here when our first child, Michelle, was an infant. We had 3 children. They all went through the Belmont public schools. They all had good experiences. And I might say I'm proud of where they are today. 2 of those 3 children are in full-time jobs combating racism. And the third job is dealing with troubled children in secondary school. So they're all deeply committed, as I have been in my career, to social justice and public service. Shortly after we arrived here in Belmont and moved here, my wife ran for the school committee. She won. She served for 9 years, 2 years as chair. And under her leadership, the face of public education in Belmont changed. She led the effort to recruit a new superintendent, Peter Holland. He came and he served many years, and he dramatically improved public schools in Belmont. At the same time, during that period, when Jean was chair, we went through 2 debt exclusions, the town of Belmont. Both were approved for the expansion and renovation of Winbrook and Burbank schools. So turning to me personally, I've devoted my life to public service in one capacity or another. I had undergraduate and graduate degrees, Princeton and Harvard, and government. Then I worked and became an expert on state and municipal finances when I ran the Mass Taxpayers Foundation for 25 years. And then in 1993, I was appointed by my predecessor, Henry Hall, to the Warrant Committee. The Warrant Committee is, we all owe a debt of gratitude in this town to the Warrant Committee. They work so hard and so diligently at the job they do. And I served for 15 years on the Warrant Committee, and then in 2018, I was elected moderator. And let me comment briefly on that, and then I'll stop.
Well, then we'll have to give.
Well, all right.
You to go over a few.
All right, but that's fine.
Once you just wrap up real quick.
Okay, fine. I've taken many initiatives to revitalize town meeting. There's more participation, more debate, more diversity, and the debate is fair and respectful. One statistic's critical, in particular what Mike Crowley said. In the last 5 years, we've seen a huge turnover in town meeting. There's a major interest in the town in running. 131 or 45% of the 288 town meeting members are new in the last 5 years. So that's exciting, and I hope we can build on that. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Okay, so if you could give a 30-second warning.
I'll set the timer for 1 minute, 30 seconds. When you hear that, then you know you have 30 seconds left.
All right, that would be helpful.
Okay, that's good.
Otherwise, you don't know.
Yeah, we don't want to spring it on. Okay, so thank you very much. So as we mentioned, as you know, there are kind of two different aspects to the job. One is actually moderating town meeting. And so it's a large body and tensions are running particularly high these days amongst Belmont residents and town meeting members. And I was wondering how you will approach, or how you have approached or how you will approach keeping town meeting going in a civil manner, in a civil and constructive manner. And what are your thoughts about that? And what are your philosophies?
So I start.
So Michael.
Yeah, I have been steadfast in my 16 years as moderator in saying that debate needs to be fair and respectful and civil. And it largely has been. And this is our democratic legislative body. And it's critical that we can debate issues passionately. We can disagree with positions. But I have said steadfastly, and I have enforced no ad hominem or personal attacks on individuals or committees. And it's interesting, as I've run for re-election, scores of town meeting members have reached out to me and said, Mike, what I appreciate most is how fair you are and how you keep the debate civil and respectful. I thought about this particular question. If I'm reelected, I've announced that this is my last year. So one way or another, there will be a transition to a new moderator. That moderator is going to be challenged on just this point. We live in a fractious, angry world, and nobody is holding back their opinions. And so it is going to be critical that town meeting give the support to the next moderator. It's going to be critical for him or her to establish the rules, but for town meeting to follow those. Because if we go down the path of ad hominem attacks on a committee, an individual, then we will descend into chaos. Democracy is too precious to do that.
Thank you.
So I am also a believer in civil debate and discussion. I am concerned about placing limits on what people say outside of the things that we obviously wouldn't tolerate, like hate speech or threatening speech or homophobic speech, racist speech. These are things that I, as moderator, wouldn't tolerate in the least. And frankly, if there were a town meeting member who were engaged in that kind of behavior, it would be a quick route to ejection from town meeting. On the other hand, I don't think I've encountered so many different opinions about how the town is operating, just going door to door. And, it's clear that town meeting members also share a variety of different opinions, and it's important to allow them to express their opinions, of course, in a civil manner. Sometimes those opinions may include criticism of something that the town is doing, something that a town body is doing, something that the town moderator is doing. From my perspective, this is constitutionally protected speech. We have to allow it. If it descends into hate speech or racist, homophobic, or other kinds of really profoundly disturbing speech, that would not be tolerated.
I need to reply quickly to the last comment that Mike Crowley said. it is not constitutionally protected speech. What is protected is fair debate. The moderator establishes the rules to ensure that there is fair debate and no personal attacks. And that is a prerogative of legislature. The decision that the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts made a year ago applied to public hearings of a select board and absolutely did not apply in any way, shape, or form to legislatures. I've conferred with town council. He's in full agreement with that. So this is ad hominem criticism of individuals and committees on town meeting floor is absolutely not constitutionally protected speech.
May I respond to that? So I'm absolutely not advocating criticism of anybody, and yet the Supreme Judicial Court has rendered an opinion. There is some legal debate within legal circles about whether this decision that was handed down in the Barron case in March of 23 applies to legislatures, of which town meeting is arguably a legislature, but it's not settled law. And regardless of whether it's settled law or not, there is a constitutional principle enshrined in 2 articles of the Massachusetts Constitution that I am a believer that we have to honor, whether they specifically apply to town meeting or not, because our residents are entitled to have and offer criticism of their town government. That's part of what being involved in town meeting should be about, that people are entitled to speak their opinions.
Of course, they're entitled to speak their opinions. They're not entitled to attack individuals and committees, and that is not enshrined in the Massachusetts Constitution. And as long as I am town moderator, I will continue to do what I've done for 16 years. And that is to say we can have vigorous debate, criticize others' opinions. Absolutely. That's the way to debate on town meeting, not to criticize individuals personally and no ad hominem attacks.
Well, you keep speaking of attacks, Mike, and I'm not advocating attacks. And frankly, I would not have any tolerance for attacks.
Good.
But criticism is constitutionally protected speech in public meetings, and I would intend to apply that principle to town meetings.
Okay, let's move on to the next question, which is actually related. So part of moderating town meeting is going to be de-escalating situations. So I'm actually going to ask you if you can describe an instance in which you have had to successfully de-escalate a situation, a conflict. So we'll start with you.
Well, so first of all, I will say this. I have not chaired a 300-person meeting before. And frankly, few people have who are not town moderators. And so there is some, if that was an absolute necessity, then we would never have any new town meeting moderators. But frankly, in my previous government experience, I used to work with the Office of Management and Budget in Washington, D.C. I spent much of my career there doing policy work and budget-related work. And I chaired many contentious and large meetings with agencies in which, frankly, people come with a variety of different thoughts and ideas, and sometimes people get angry. And I feel that I was quite successful in calming people down and trying to stick to what the agenda is. We have a common purpose. We have a common goal. Let's let's try to stick with the agenda. And frankly, town meeting, I think, operates the same way. We have to stay on track and not allow town meeting to be derailed.
That's a very important question, Julie. Town meeting takes enormous amount of preparation. I started a whole planning process when I became town moderator. Literally probably 100 hours of planning. Some of that is routine, but a lot of it is thinking about just the question you raise. Where is it likely that some individual talking at town meeting is going to veer off the tracks in the sense of public criticism or attack, so forth? And I think long and hard in advance about where those might be. There are always surprises, but lots of times I've anticipated. What I try to do is initially suggest to the person, hey, you're moving off track, come back. Usually that works. And that allows us to continue in a civil, fair discourse. It doesn't always work. And there have been a handful of occasions in my 16 years where it's become more contentious. But the job of a moderator is an art form. It's very challenging. My whole career, I did public speaking, and I chaired meetings after meetings after meetings. Managing town meeting is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in the public sphere. And it is an art form because you're always going to get challenges that are unexpected. And your responsibility as a moderator is to try to keep the debate going forward and not become the issue yourself. So I'm glad you asked that question because it's something that I've worked very hard at over the years and I think been largely successful.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on to the other sort of aspect of being a moderator. So I guess we can ask, how have you been ensuring that committees are appointed in a fair and effective way? And how would you in the future do that?
Do I start?
Sure, you can start.
So yeah, 90% of moderator's job is planning and conducting town meeting. The other 10% is critically important. And that's the appointment of a handful of committees. These committees, the Warrant Committee, Capital Budget Committee, report to town meeting as the legislative body. So that's why the moderator appoints them. I go through an elaborate process, an elaborate, open and transparent and public process, and then a vetting process in terms of identifying candidates for the Warrant Committee. So I'm very public at first. So for example, when the Library Building Committee passed town meeting, I announced publicly to town meeting, please, anybody who wants to serve on this building committee, contact me at mike.j.widmer@gmail.com. Public, and then giving my cell as well. And then you get people who do volunteer. I reach out then to town leaders, to the school folks, to community activists, and the bloggers, trying to elicit ideas in individual. When they volunteer, or when somebody suggests them, I reach out and then I sit down with them and we have conversation. Mike mentioned earlier that I had appointed him to the Warrant Committee. He, I think, sent me his resume. We sat down and had coffee, I think twice, and that's sort of what I do. And I see whether there's a fit. And the fit in the Warrant Committee, for example, is are they going to be, you want a range of expertise, a range of experiences, and a range of ideologies. And can those individuals come together and work as a unit in order to get the job done. So that's the process I go through. I'm very proud of a couple of things. One, that you had the select board here a few moments ago. Two of those three members I appointed Mike Crowley, and I appointed the most recent departure from the Board of Selectmen, Adam Dash, to the Warrant Committee. And finally, my most recent 6 appointments are a diverse cross-section of Belmont. 5 of them have children in the public schools, and the 6th has a grandchildren in the public schools. And one of them is Deepak, your treasurer of the Pan Asian Coalition. So I have focused on diversity in all of my appointments, and I've been made considerable success.
Thank you. I'll let you go a little bit over to.
All right. So, I've thought a lot about this when the select board or the school committee, these are 2 bodies that both appoint people to town committees. When they do this, there is a public discussion that takes place in a meeting governed by open meeting law that the public is privy to, in which people can hear about the interests of candidates for town meetings. For town committees. They can hear something about the qualifications that these people bring, and they can hear some discussion take place on the respective bodies, the select board or the school committee, about these potential appointments as they're made. And I think that's important. I think it's a kind of transparency that I think builds more confidence in our town committees. And I'm not saying there's anything nefarious about the current process for the moderator appointed committees. And I do appreciate the process that Mike Widmer goes through in vetting candidates for his committees. But I would like to form a moderators advisory committee composed of town meeting members who could meet under open meeting law and serve as that body in which we could have some public discussion about appointees before they're actually made to the moderator appointed committees. I think this would be helpful, and it's something that I plan to do.
Jen, are there any questions on the?
So there is one follow-up question on the earlier debate, and I'm not sure if it's already answered
You mean of the moderators?
for the moderator.
For the moderator?
For the moderator, or specifically when we were talking about civil debates on whether or not criticizing the work of town committees or elected official is considered to be civil. Not attacking people, but specifically on the work that they have done. Would you consider that to be
I guess we can go.
available for town meeting debates?
Okay. Can also, yeah, okay. Can we criticize the work of committee?
Well, it depends totally on the context and the motion before town meeting. Because that's the issue, confining discussion to the motion. It's going beyond the motion that we're discussing where this becomes germane. So as a general matter, the issue at hand the motion should be debated on the content of the motion, the arguments for the motion. So Mr. Crowley had a motion at the town meeting last June. Do we give additional money for special ed to the schools? Question is debating on the merit of that, not on the role or attitude or work of a committee. That is outside the scope of that discussion. We haven't talked tonight about scope. Scope is a critical element. I mentioned art form. A critical element of moderator's role is to keep discussion within scope. And criticizing committees when you're discussing a specific motion is beyond the scope of that discussion.
So in general, I agree with what Mike just said, with the exception that, you know, if someone offers a criticism of a committee or a town board or town official as part of their arguments on the merits of a motion, I have no difficulty with allowing that person to voice their concerns. I think that is something that is fundamental to citizens' rights in Massachusetts, including the rights of town meeting members to be able to voice concerns about their town government in the context of discussion and debate at town meeting. So, you know, I think it's important to allow people to voice their opinions as part of that discussion. And I would aim to protect people's rights to, or town meeting members' rights to offer such opinions. If they are contextually appropriate to the motion, of course.
Any questions? Here?
Well, I want to ask the same question as I asked earlier, which is how do you improve communication or soliciting feedback from the Asian or non-voting population? For example, would you be open to non-resident voting or non-resident members of town meeting or non-citizen member to town meeting or non-citizen member to appointed committees?
So I'm open to non-citizen members of committees and town meeting. I think that we probably need changes to bylaws in order for that to take place. But at the same time, you know, it's something that I would support. I do feel that all of our residents, you know, whether they are citizens or not, deserve the same rights to participate in their local government as much as possible. And I would like to say this too, that part of my goal as a town moderator would be to work with community organizations like the Belmont Pan-Asian Coalition and the Belmont Chinese American Association to do outreach to Asian Americans in the community. And you know, if we have some change in bylaws that allows non-citizens to participate, you know, Asian residents of the community, even if they're not American.
I just want to interject before you start that non-citizens can be appointed and participate in boards and committees. They just can't currently be on town meeting.
Yeah, I wasn't certain of that.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. In one way or another, my whole career has been committed to diversity. I touched on that in my opening remarks. Mike talked about his family. I have so I'll talk about mine. I have a Chinese daughter-in-law. I have 2 Chinese American grandchildren. I have an Indian American sister-in-law. I have an indigenous granddaughter. And I love them all. And I have done and I will continue to do everything in my power to expand the rights and participation of diverse populations. And one of the great things that's happened in Belmont in the last 15 years in particular is the growth of diverse ethnic groups and populations. And when Gene and I first went into town meeting, it was all white male old guys. Now I've become old and Mike's become old.
We both have gray hair.
Yeah, and we both have great, and I don't have much. But it is a very different, town meeting's a very different body today. Belmont's a very different community today. And so I will continue to do, if I'm reelected, everything I can to expand the diversity.
One more question from the public.
Okay.
Mark, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
Hi, I had a question to both moderator candidates. How do they plan to use their committee appointments to drive more sustainable development for the town, particularly development in terms of attracting attracting businesses to the town and attracting commercial development? Thank you.
See, who went first before?
I think I did.
Yeah, well, yeah, this issue has come up in the campaign and it's a bit misleading. The moderator appoints just a handful of committees. The warrant committee and the capital budget committee are the two main committee and building committees. The warrant committee's role is to develop bits of hours it takes for each individual to develop the town's budget. They meet in subcommittee, as Mike knows, he did it, and I did it. We meet with subcommittees of the town, schools, public works, police, whatever, meetings of the full warrant committee, and ultimately produce a budget document of maybe 75 pages. It's a huge amount of work. That is the major role of the warrant committee. Economic development is the role of the board of the select board. Now, there are financial elements to things that the warrant committee does, but the warrant committee is not responsible for economic development. And so that is a misleading notion that has been in this campaign. In terms of appointments, the issue, as I've said earlier, is to identify expertise and backgrounds and skills and ideologies and have a balance so that the product that is produced by the warrant committee can be a teamwork effort that pulls on all of these skills and diverse backgrounds. Thank you.
Mike?
Well, I have a slightly different take on things. First of all, apart from the warrant committee, I feel that we need almost a Manhattan Project-like effort when it comes to approaching Belmont's need for commercial development. Our need is absolute, and we cannot dig our way out of our financial problems without concerted effort on the part of multiple bodies in this town to change our direction. And when it comes to the warrant committee has such an important role when it comes to financial issues and advising the town on financial issues. And I'm in complete agreement with Mike that the warrant committee does not do commercial development. And I don't think that should be an issue in the campaign. But the role I do see for the warrant committee and ultimately the role that I'd be thinking about as I think about warrant committee appointments is that we need to have this committee spending some time on the revenue side of the budget and doing analytical work that can help the town when it comes to the need to expand our revenue. And And in terms of commercial development, I can see a number of things that the warrant committee can do. The warrant committee can do analysis of comparable, communities, looking at what they do with respect to commercial development. You know, what do they budget? What kind of effort do they allot to commercial development? You know, what are the factors that perhaps make them more successful or less successful? This all has impact in terms of our town's finances and is part of the warrant committee's financial advisory role.
Okay. Are there any other questions that people here have or?
That's all we have.
That's all we have?
Yes.
It is past the time. So maybe we should have our closing statements and then we'll wrap up. So Michael.
Right.
First. 2 minutes.
So, yes, thank you. Very.
I'll set it for 1.5.
Okay.
When you hear it, you'll have 30 seconds to go. How's that? Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for hosting this evening. It's a real privilege to be here. I've served Belmont for a long time, and it's been a labor of love. You know, when I became moderator, I knew I would enjoy it, and I worked hard at it, but it has become a real honor to serve the citizens of Belmont. And I've worked very, very hard at it. I'm running for re-election for my final year. I announced that when I submitted my papers. And I did that for 2 reasons. First, because of the issues that are coming before town meeting this year are going to be very, very divisive and complicated. And they are going to, like the MBTA zoning law, they are going to require a moderator with experience to handle the kind of the amendments that will come forward and the divisiveness that will come forward. So they will require that experience. I have overseen 102 town meetings. I can't believe it, but that kind of experience will be essential. The other reason I announced that I was going to run 1 more year is to allow for an orderly transition, so to speak, give advance notice to the public, and then we could have a broad community discussion about succeeding me and what it would take to be a good moderator. Perfectly appropriate for Mike Crowley to throw his hat in the ring. And we've had this debate tonight, some similarities and clearly some differences about handling town meeting. If I'm reelected, I am going to do what I've done for 16 years. I am going to oversee a fair and civil debate of contentious issues. I'm going to put enormous effort into the planning, and I'm going to do what I've done all along, and that is give extensive communications to town meeting members in advance. We haven't talked about that tonight. That has been a key thing that I have done, and that has improved the quality of the debate at town meeting because town meeting members understand. I am deeply committed to fair and civil debate, and I will absolutely continue to draw the line on ad hominem and personal attacks on individuals and committees, which would quickly descend into chaos on town meeting floor. There is too much at stake in town meeting and in our legislative body, our democracy, to do anything else. I'm Michael Widmer. I ask for your vote on April 2nd. Thank you.
We'll give you extra time too.
All right. Well, so I'm realizing that if Mike has chaired 100 meetings, I've been there for at least half of them, which has contributed to the gray hair. So why am I running for office? Why have I run for any office? I'm not seeking any kind of, I'm not a glory hound. I'm not seeking any kind of personal attention. And in fact, I have to tell you that I have to push myself to go out and knock on doors. Because honestly, I am a shy person by nature. And so, reaching out to others is something, if you're a shy person, that can be difficult. But at the same time, I am a firm believer that community doesn't stop at the front door. I love my house and I like living in Belmont. And, if my wife ever talks about, maybe we should move because this isn't right, or, she's working more in New York these days. I keep thinking about, I like this house. I like my backyard. I like the rabbits that are hopping around back there. I like the fox that was in my front yard the other day. But I want to give something back to this community that I really enjoy. And I do want to change the focus of the job a little bit of town moderator. I do want to be engaging in more extensive outreach and education, working with community groups to get more people running for town meeting to ensure that we have a truly democratic process and that town meeting, when it votes, no matter what the issue is, whether it's, bylaw changes, whether it's zoning bylaws, whether it's the budget, that ultimately the result of town meeting is something that the community can understand and accept.
Thank you. Thanks to you both.
Thank you.